You guys are having a good time?
You could
Always
strike
do.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Today's probably last day.
I called that.
Well, it's
7:30. Well, yeah, it's going to be, but when you actually be here, like, really early in the morning.
Okay, so in chapter 6, we are touching base again on marginal cost and marginal benefit. Who remembers what those are? Yes, Kate.
Marginal benefit is the benefit you get from either choosing to do more or less of a certain activity, or buy more or less, and then the cost is the cost you experience because you decided to do more or less.
Right. Essentially. Okay. So to review some key terms. Right, this, I did these on second paper. Okay. I'm gonna do some abbreviating, so if you don't understand, just ask, but, marginal benefit, MB, is the added benefit a person receives from the consumption of additional good. So basically, as more of a good is consumed, its marginal benefit decreases. Remember that we had that slope that kind of went this way. So, the more you consumed of it, like eventually you reached a point where you didn't enjoy it as much. So that was the example of like 3 bowls of macaroni versus like 10. But when you're on that 10th bowl, you're not experiencing that same fulfillment as you were like on the first, second, or third bowl, right? Okay. And then the marginal cost is the opportunity cost of producing one more unit of a good. And that's on the producer's side. So as more of a good is produced, its marginal cost increases for the producer. And that's because once you reach a certain point, you're gonna have to bring in more labor or more capital, more machinery. So the additional cost of producing one more unit at a certain point will actually make that cost increase. All on the same page here. So we talked about the efficient level of output is what? Or being efficient at what point? What is equal, what?
Equilibrium.
Right, so that's when the what equals the what. Right, or when we're talking about costs and benefits. No?
Price equals quantity.
The marginal cost is equal to the marginal benefit. Okay, so that we're efficient when the marginal cost is equal to the marginal benefit. And then we we talked about, if the marginal benefit from a good exceeds its marginal cost, then resources are being used more efficiently by producing more of the good. So that would be marginal benefit greater than marginal cost. And then, if the marginal cost of a good exceeds its marginal benefit, resources are used more efficiently by producing less of that good. So that would be the MB less than MC. To make this more uniform. So efficient is marginal benefit equals marginal cost. And then if marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost, you produce more. If the marginal benefit is less than the marginal cost, you produce less. That'll be guys in the ceilings, the camera here, pretty sure. Okay. So, in chapter 6, we start to talk about consumer surplus, value price, and then also towards the middle to end, the producer surplus. And we can do that by looking at graphs. But just to kind of hit home a little more on the marginal benefit. The marginal benefit is the added benefit a person receives from consumption of an additional good, but it's also the maximum price that someone's willing to pay for another unit. Okay. So, for example, the marginal benefit from a pizza is the maximum amount of other goods and services that people are willing to give up to get one more pizza. So if you wanted to buy 2 pizzas, but you also wanted to buy, I don't know, a 2-liter pop. If you're gonna get that second pizza, you may not be able to afford that second liter pop, so the cost is that pop that you won't be able to get because you got 2 pizzas. Follow that? Okay. And then for consumer surplus, measures the difference between the highest price a consumer is willing to pay and the price the consumer actually pays. Do you guys ever leave off letters when you're like writing fast? I do that a lot, so if I do that, tell me. Almost forgot the Y on that day. Okay. And the price that day, actually. So with this, let's say, who was the biggest Harry Potter fan last week? I remember. Okay, so let's say Sierra. Let's say Sierra goes to the store and she's wanting to buy the latest DVD of Harry Potter. Let's say you're willing to pay $20 for it because you are in love with Harry Potter and you have to have it. Okay, so your expected price is $20. When you get to the store, you find the DVD and oh my gosh, it's only $12. Holy cow. Okay, so actual price, $12. So you were expecting to pay $20, you only have to pay $8 or $12. So the consumer surplus in this example would be $8, and that's the difference. $20 minus 12 is 8. So it was measuring the highest price that Sierra was willing to pay and then the price she actually paid for the DVD. So her consumer surplus is $8. And then we can use the demand curve to measure the total consumer surplus in a market. So this is just kind of Sierra's market, but we can look at broad markets and see what the consumer surplus would be for everyone in that market. So demand curves will show the willingness of consumers to purchase a product at different prices, and we've seen that in all the demand curves we've worked with, where you have the different levels of price. This is your supply, demand, if we're here, quantity, demand. So we're looking at the different levels someone would buy at different prices, right? Quantity demanded versus price. So consumers are willing to purchase a product up to a point where the marginal benefit of consuming a product is equal to its price. So I'm gonna put this here. Sorry. This looks so pretty on the PowerPoint. See? Hopefully it'll work tomorrow. Okay, consumers are willing to purchase so consumers are willing to purchase a product up to the point where the marginal benefit of consuming a product is equal to its price. Alright, so this is quantity. We're looking at chai tea sales, so a cup of chai tea. Quantity price, so this is quantity of cups per day. And then the price is dollars per cup. Okay. So in this example, I'm using stair steps because it's going to be easier to understand. Eventually we will be doing just so I can do curves. So this is comparing 4 different consumers. So to make it easy, I'll just stick with the ones here. So this is Teresa. We have Tom, Terry. They're big on T names. And then finally we have Tim. Okay, and then this is the market demand curve for chai tea. Which chai tea is my favorite, so I was kind of excited about this example. I would be Teresa in this example, and I would pay $6 for 1 cup of tea. Okay. So this is showing the different levels that they would be willing. So at 1 cup, Teresa is willing to pay $6. $5, Tom is willing to pay also Teresa, she's all the way up at 6, so at $5, both Tom and Teresa would buy a cup of tea. At $4, Terry, Tom, and Teresa would all buy tea. $3, all 4 of them would buy tea. And then, we'll get to that. Okay, so anything above $6, so Teresa's like, whoa, $6 is my limit. If you go $6.01, it's just too much. So anything above $6, nobody would buy. So no one's willing to buy chai tea for more than $6, and then we went through that. At a price of $3, 4 cups are being sold. And then okay, so if we say the price of chai tea is $3.50, so $3.50. So, in this example now, chai tea costs $3.50 a cup. So to find out the consumer surplus for each person, we can do that by taking the maximum amount they're willing to pay, subtract the cost it actually pays, and then the difference is gonna be their consumer surplus. So, for Teresa, $6 minus $3.50. So her consumer surplus would be $2.50. For Tom, it would be $3.50, no. $5, so he's willing to pay $5, so his would be $5 minus the $3.50, which is equal to $1.50. And then for Terry, that's $4 minus $3.50 a cup, which is equal to 50 cents. And then Tim is not willing to pay anything above $3, so Tim won't buy a cup at this price. Okay, did you guys all see how it's going?
So this was like on a homework assignment or a test question, like that is how you, like you would want us to write our answer.
This is just kind of showing you how we're getting the answer, but eventually we're gonna be working with demand curves that are not rectangle shaped. They're gonna be in the form of a triangle, so you're gonna be solving the area of a triangle.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, so this is just kind of showing you how we're getting to this step.
okay. So if we had to find like all of them together, would we have to like find the average? Like if it said find the consumer surplus of all of them, would you just take the average of 250, 150, and 50?
It's just, yeah, you just add everything together,
Okay.
and that's actually the next step.
Oh, okay.
So, individually, Teresa's consumer surplus is $2.50, and that's in this rectangle. This one for Tom is 1.5, and then for Terry, it's 50 cents. Okay, and then the total consumer surplus equals 250 plus 150 plus 50 cents, which is equal to $4.50. Okay, so this is total consumer surplus. Okay. Then if the price of tea dropped to only $3 a cup, the consumer surplus would increase by 50 cents for Teresa, Tom, and Terry. So if we move down, 3, sorry, we move down to $3. This is increasing by 50 cents, so you could go through and do 6 minus 3 and still get the same answer. We can just add 0.5, and we would have 3. Two. And then Tim would now buy a cup of coffee, but his highest price was $3, so he doesn't have a consumer surplus. But as before, he didn't even wanna buy that cup, now he's willing to buy it or not, okay? So, the total amount of consumer surplus in a market is equal to the area below the demand curve and above the market price. So, if this is the market price, this is your demand curve, the amount of consumer surplus in a market is equal to the area below the demand curve, so below demand curve, but then above market price. We're in this area here. Okay, so when we're solving for the triangle, who remembers how to find the area of the triangle is the equation? Yep, so 1/2 base times height. Okay, so we'll go ahead and look, homework problem number 1 on page 125, we're gonna look at A and B. Okay, Marie, do you mind reading, homework problem?
Sure. You want me to
Yeah, just whatever's there.
figure shows the demand for and supply of floppy disks. A, what are the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity of floppy disks? B, what is the consumer surplus? C, what is the producer surplus? And D, what is the efficient quantity of floppy disks?
Okay, so for right now, since we're just dealing with consumer surplus, we're just gonna answer A and B. So, does everybody have their book that they can look at this problem, or do I need to draw it on the board? Okay. Way to be prepared for class.
Well, wait, I used to public already.
That's okay.
The one day.
The one day, how it always works. Well, if our PowerPoint was working, it would be up there, but since it's not. Okay, so. Okay, so it looks something like this, right? So what is the equilibrium price? Yes. And what is the equilibrium quantity? Right. So here's our equilibrium point. We have our quantity of 3 and our price of $1. Okay, so our consumer surplus is the point above market price, below the demand curve. So we're in this area here, and that's what we're gonna solve for. So the area 1/2 base times height. So our base is 3. And our height would be 250 minus 150, so 1.5. Right? So then what is the area of this triangle?
Wait, how'd you get the height?
The height is right here, so 250 minus 1, equals 1.50. So we're taking 250 minus 1 to find out what this right here is. Okay, and then for the base, we're looking at these 3 units here, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we're using our equilibrium point to kind of give us those measurements. So it's 1/2 base times height, so if you do the math, it eventually is 225. And that is, so 150, Alright, so 1.5 times 3 equals 450, and if we divide that by 2, we get 225. So in this, the consumer surplus is 2.25. Did you follow that? Any questions? Okay. Do you wanna read the question for number 2?
Sure. The figure shows the demand for and supply of cans of beans. A, what are the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity of cans of beans? B, what is the consumer surplus? C, what is the producer surplus? And D, what is the efficient quantity of beans?
Okay, so let's look at A and B, and who wants to go to the board to do these? You only have about 2 minutes, so you might not be able to get that much. Go ahead.
Can I take my book up there?
Yeah, you can. I won't make you redraw this, but you can go ahead and do the math. Unless you wanna draw it, but we can. Okay, so equilibrium price is $2, and the quantity is fine. Yep. That's what I got.
That's what I got.
Okay, good job.
So the equation for consumer surplus is just based on the value.
Well, we're finding the area of the triangle, so. So whatever this price to this price, we're using this as our height,
Right.
and then we're using the quantity here for the base, so yeah. It's just 1/2, so we're doing, if we were doing a full rectangle like we were doing in this example, it would just be the area of this, but since we're just looking for this triangle now, we're doing the equation for the area of just that triangle, so yeah, 1/2 base times height. Make sense? Still confused?
Yeah, I guess it makes sense just because the question is just asking what the consumer surplus is, and so we find it
By doing this math, yeah, so for Mac's example, the consumer surplus is 30. So that means the area over here is equal to 30. Okay, does that make sense? So confused? Okay. Making sense, yes? Okay.
What units is 30B? It's not $30, is it?
Cans per month.
Okay.
So on that particular graph, we were looking at the quantity of cans per month. and then the price of dollars per can. There's the bell. If you haven't read chapter 6, read it as well as chapter 7, because we will cover, and we're gonna do those both, joint this week.
Is the chapter 7 just the one from our economics book?
Yeah.